Good morning, everybody. Today I'm going to read a little bit about daily life in Jesus' time. Many of the events of Jesus' life and many of the stories or parables that he told took place in and around the simple homes in which ordinary people lived. Jesus used the parables to teach people about God in a way that they would understand and remember. His stories often reflected features of people's everyday lives, such as farming, fishing, working in the vineyards, shepherding in their flocks, and other things that would have been familiar to them. Simple houses. There were many different types of houses in Palestine at the time of Jesus. Many people lived in one-room buildings, small, like the one above, which are in Judea. Where and how people lived. Galilean villagers often worked in their own houses or in the fields and vineyards nearby. Many were fishermen on the Sea of Galilee. Although the houses of wealthier people would have had several rooms, ordinary mud brick houses often just had one room downstairs with a raised section for cooking, eating, and sleeping. The cool, dark room or rooms inside the houses were lit by high, small windows and by oil lamps. Animals were kept in a courtyard by those who could afford them, but household animals were often kept in the lower part of the house at night. Often stairs or a ladder led up to the flat roof, where the family sometimes slept or spent time, and where they dried crops such as grapes or flax. The roof was usually made of branches covered with clay and straw. These could be cut away, as in the story of the men who break up the roof of a house to lower their friend down to Jesus. At the Festival of the Tabernacles, family built shelters on the roof in thanksgiving to God for protecting them and fulfilling their needs. The festival came at harvest time, and the shelter was decorated with leaves and fruit as a reminder of God's provision for his people. In Jesus' story of the lost coin, the woman may have had trouble finding the coin in the straw spread for the animals in her house. It was a woman's duty to look after her house. She would prepare and cook the food and bake the bread daily. She also spun and wove and made clothes and worked in the fields at harvest time. Women made daily trips to the well for drinking water, which they carried in large jars. Here's an example of the larger house with 2 floors for the wealthier people. It has like a deck and like stairs and a spot for the animals. The farmer's year. Jesus often referred to farming in his parables. For example, he compared the word of God to seed that a sower scatters on the ground. He once said that he was as close to his followers as a vine to its branches. He also told people that God would decide who who was in his kingdom, just as a farmer had to separate the weeds and the grain from the chaff. The farmer's year started usually in October when the fields were plowed for the 2 main cereal crops, barley and wheat. Farmers used wooden plows, sometimes drawn by oxen. After this, the seed was sown by hand over the plowed earth. In the new year, flax was harvested, followed by wheat and barley in May or April. The grain was cut with a sickle and tied into sheaves. Stalks were then beaten and with a stick to loosen the grain, and finally they were tossed in the air with a wooden fork, called a winnowing fork. Right there. Many of the Jewish festivals marked important times in the year for those who worked in the fields. The feast of Passover was celebrated during the barley and flax harvest in March or April. 50 days later, at the end of the grain harvest, the feast of Pentecost was celebrated to thank God for the gifts of the harvest. Vines were pruned from June through August, and then in September and August, fruits such as figs, pomegranates, grapes were picked. Jesus usually preached in the open air, so we might have watched a farmer at work in the fields as he told stories. This is the farmer in the field. It looks rocky to me. And then that's people harvesting the grapes. A shepherd's work. Shepherds often looked after both sheep and goats. Their job was to lead their flocks to fresh pasture and water and to protect them from wild animals. In one parable, Jesus tells of a shepherd who searches for his lost sheep. This story shows that God cares for his people as a shepherd cares for his sheep. Here he is, in the field, protecting them from the wolves. That's it for now. I hope to see you guys on Sunday. Bye!